I'm James Rosenthal,
And I'm John Hess.
and today we will be talking about Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Trilogy. It's a franchise that is really born out of a response to, in my mind, the 80s and 90s Batman films, especially the last two, that basically killed the franchise for, a decade? Something like that. uh,
Well, yeah, I mean, you couldn't really do much after Batman and Robin other than just laugh.
Yeah, what an abysmal movie, which we will get to somewhere down the line because I have those original Batman movies on the slate, but we'll have to put that out there sometime. But I figured I'd start off on more of a positive note, and we'll go with the Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. It'll be interesting to kind of see where we stack up on this one. Starting with Batman Begins, you're coming from this world of, the last thing that we saw was Batman and Robin, as you said, with horrible film, cartoony, horrible, overacting characters, and now we get into Christopher Nolan's world, which is much more grounded in reality, for better or worse. I know some people kind of rag on Nolan for that, where he kind of took a lot of the more supernatural elements out. But I think that was in part an attempt to distinguish this as a very different path than where we've been before in the movie universe. The first thing that was really interesting about this movie and got the comic book geek in me excited was its choice of villains. When I heard that Ra's al Ghul of all characters was going to be the big baddie in this one, and that Scarecrow was going to be in it as somewhat of a minor villain, those two choices were very brave.
Yeah, see, I'd heard of Scarecrow, very limited, because, I'm not a huge, comic book dude, so, I had no clue who Ra's al Ghul was.
Yeah.
So I legit just thought that was, a made-up character or something like that, I didn't realize that this went so closely with some of the comic book characters and stuff like that, so knowing that now, it's a lot more interesting.
Even, the thug Carmine Falcone comes straight from the comics as well, so it really was encouraging to hear that when I saw that, and then I saw the trailers, which were a lot more dark and brooding, which is kind of my Batman that I grew up reading. Batman's been through so many iterations, I think the pop culture's kind of always reflected where the comic books kind of were. The character's been all over the place, but he was a lot darker at that time. To see a movie coming out that I was like, oh wow, that actually, that looks like the comics I remember reading. Was very exciting to me. And the movie, for the most part, I went in and it didn't disappoint.
And did you see this in the theater?
I did. I saw all these films in the theater, I believe, yes.
Well, I think at the time, so this is Batman and Robin is 97.
Yeah.
Batman Begins is 2005. And I think that was kind of what kicked off Christian Bale's career. I mean, sort of. He'd been in, a few things before that, but...
Yeah, American Psycho.
Yeah, American Psycho in 2000.
Kind of his biggest movie up to that point, I think.
Yeah, well, he was in Reign of Fire with Matthew McConaughey in 2002, which is kind of an epic movie if you've never seen it. But he was in The Machinist in 2004.
Yes, and he lost a ton of weight for that.
Yeah, well, and that's also interesting, too, because then in 2005 he's in Batman Begins, and he's just ripped. So, but yeah, I think that's kind of what kicked off, his career that we see today. He wasn't unknown per se, but he definitely was not an odd choice, but just kind of not a... I mean, I'm trying to think of who at the time would have been a really popular actor, and I guess I can't really... I mean, maybe Matthew McConaughey. That would have been interesting.
Oh my gosh, Matthew McConaughey is
I'm
Batman.
Batman.
And I drive a Lincoln.
Livin.
Christian Bale, it was a role that made him much more of a household name. I think after that, we get into this film, and I think almost all of it works beautifully for me. I don't really have a lot to judge this movie on. There's only two real glaring issues for me, I think.
Well, yeah, people, talk up The Dark Knight so much, but like you forget that this is what kind of started it all.
Yeah.
And like this is like a standalone movie is actually really good.
Yeah.
There's a beginning, middle, and end that are very not predictable per se. There's some twists and turns in there, and it's a good retelling of the Batman kind of origin story,
Right.
without beating it to death, basically.
And I do also like the choice that there is no Batman costume for at least the first half of this film. I think there was a very conscious effort to tamper that down and to take their time setting the groundwork.
Well, and then when it happens, it's like, there are multiple iterations of this suit that doesn't really work, and it's too stiff and all these other things. And even into, I think, The Dark Knight, he still has more stuff. So
because his first suit, the very first suit, is in part just a ski mask.
Yeah.
And, just some stuff he had lying around. And I thought that was actually a fun scene with Commissioner Gordon where he holds a stapler to Gordon's head as if it's a gun and has a conversation with him. It's a great film. I think it's often overlooked by The Dark Knight. And, no fault of Dark Knight. It's one of my favorite movies, let alone, one of my favorite comic book movies. I do think, yeah, you're right. I think Batman Begins gets so overlooked, and it's so sad because there's a lot of good here. Well, Liam Neeson, he turns in a good performance, as he does. He's good in almost anything he does.
I mean, he does have a certain set of skills.
He does have a certain set of skills. You're correct about that. And he uses them to perfection in this movie. I think one of the funnier things that came out of this, and he gets ragged on about this, is that Batman voice.
Oh, yeah. Can't talk about Batman without talking about the Batman voice.
Yeah, which it works for me. I like I do like the idea, though. I do like that they actually went with trying to disguise the voice, because that was always something that was kind of funny about the original films, where I'm just going to talk like I normally talk.
Yeah. It's like you can see like half of my face, and I'm just going to speak how I normally speak, but nobody's going to know who I am.
Right. And so I do like that idea that he would, try to change his voice. I do think, though, it's to such a degree that it's comical.
No, for sure.
If you stand back and take a look at it, and so it is pretty funny. Especially, I think the funniest part. I don't know why it strikes me as so funny, but it's near the end of the movie where he's about to jump off the roof, and Rachel says, you could die. What's your name? And then he does in the Batman voice. It's not who I am, but what I do that defines me, or whatever. He says that line, and there's something about it saying it in the Batman voice that just cracks me up every time I hear it.
It's not who I am, but what I do that defines me.
Yeah, it's so funny because he's trying to be so serious, and it's like, ooh, kind of giving the wink and nod that, hey, I'm Bruce Wayne to Rachel without saying I'm Batman. But that's not a flaw with the movie per se. It's just kind of it's funny. It is what it is.
Secondary thing that kind of comes from it.
Right.
I'm sure they probably were not anticipating such a blowback from that. But, I mean, I think it still works. I think they dialed it back a little bit.
Yeah.
In the Dark Knight, although not by much. I think they did a little bit more in the Dark Knight Rises. But when you're competing with Bane's voice in that movie,
oh my gosh, we're going to get to that one. One of my major gripes with this film is Katie Holmes, and I'm not saying that to be a Katie Holmes hater. I don't really care one way or the other. It's not a Tom Cruise thing either. That's not where I'm coming from. This smirky McSmirk face that she has throughout the entire movie drives me crazy. She can't act herself out of a wet paper bag. I just do not like her in this role because she's a woman. No, I'm just kidding. No. I don't like her in this role because I think in part you're surrounding this whole cast is a strong acting cast. It really is. You've got some great actors from Morgan Freeman, Christian Bale, Liam Neeson, Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow's great. I mean, you go down the line, you've got a lot of really strong actors, and then Katie Holmes, who is the weakest of the weakest of the weak.
Yeah.
She stands out like a sore thumb in this. And the fact that she really can't act and she has this permanent smirk on her face no matter what she says.
Well, she's useful in certain characters, but this just didn't seem to be one of them.
No, it really wasn't. And I didn't like her in this. And that kind of bleeds over into Dark Knight with the recast, which we'll get to. And I think that the other gripe that I had, and this carries on in all three films. All three films have this. and it only happens with one or two characters in the film, and that is really bad dialogue, odd dialogue, and in Batman Begins, I have to believe it was, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is Christopher Nolan, and maybe I'm cutting him too much slack, but I have to believe this was some sort of studio decision. And it's at the end of the movie where Batman is following the train that's blowing up all the fear gas stuff, and all of a sudden we cut to these like train operator guys or something like that, and there's this old guy in there. He's like, and he's giving the exposition of the obvious, which we already know is but he's like, well, man, if that train gets here, it's gonna blow the whole thing, and you know.
But they're doing that for the mouth breathers, James. They have to
know.
make it super obvious for all the people who are shoving popcorn down their throat.
Just it's so, but the dialogue is so bad, and it's out of place. It's just weird, and it takes away from the tension of the actual scene of Batman trying to catch up to the train. So we cut to these clowns,
Yeah.
and it's just really odd. And I just wonder if that was added afterwards by the studio, who and maybe I'm wrong, but it just feels like it to me, where it's like they're like, oh well, you know, Christopher Nolan, you need to put in more of an explanation of what's
People
going on
aren't
here.
going to know what's going on, Nolan.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. And if Christopher Nolan put that in there, which I kind of think he probably did when I really think about it, because other movies have this problem too, and it can't just be a coincidence that sometimes there are just some characters that just sound like idiots. And I don't get it. It's a weird trait that all three of these movies share.
And there's some movies that everyone in it sounds like an idiot.
Hell, and we'll get to those films too.
Have you seen an Adam Sandler movie anytime recently?
That's really the only bad, though, that I have with Batman Begins. And I really, honestly, I don't really have a lot more to say about Batman Begins other than it's a great film. It's one that shouldn't be overlooked. It's a great start to a trilogy, and it gave me a lot of hope for, moving forward.
Do you know, was this meant to be a trilogy?
I think that while the studio was hoping there would be room for a trilogy, I don't think that was the actual dyed-in-the-wool plan. Because at the very end of this film, there is the scene that's Commissioner Gordon hands Batman the Joker card, and they tease the Joker. Well, according to Christopher Nolan from interviews, that wasn't a plan to have Joker in the next movie. That was just a nod to the Joker in general.
Yeah.
So, they could have been anyone that could have come next. So if they were planning a trilogy, they definitely weren't planning who was in it or what the plots were or anything like that. I can say that for sure.
And this was a fairly early comic book movie.
Yeah.
As far as those are concerned, and it's kind of one of the earlier reboots too.
True. Because I think that the comic book explosion really happened around 2000, 2001 with X-Men and Spider-Man. They were kind of in that area. And so, 2005, coming in with Batman Begins. It was at the beginning.
Yeah, I kind of you already said, I see this as a good standalone movie, and I think you're right. I when I saw the Joker thing at the end, I just assumed, oh, that's just a nod.
Right.
I didn't really think anything of it, because it seemed like a good just standalone movie. Like I said, there was a good beginning, middle, and a resolution.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing really left open.
But I think, again, I don't know if this is fact, but I wonder if so many people bought into that Joker was going to be the next villain, and that they were all thrilled about it, that maybe that forced Nolan's hand to put Joker in the next film.
It could very well be. I mean, it was a good choice in the end, obviously. But
fantastic choice.
But yeah, that's quite possible. I don't know.
All that being said, we get into The Dark Knight, and it turns out to be one of the best films, let alone best comic book movies of all time. And I can say that no problem at all. I really, really love The Dark Knight. And I'm not going to go on forever about it, because I feel like everyone says it. Heath Ledger, I mean, he disappears behind the face of the Joker. I don't even see Heath Ledger. That's how great his performance is. It's not just the makeup. It is the performance, the voice, the actions, the way he licks his lips, and that
the little mannerisms that you wouldn't even think of.
Yeah.
Just how he moves his mouth and how he says things in a certain way, and he did a fantastic job.
Yeah. He became the character, and it's very rare, I think, in any film where you actually see that degree of an actor falling into the character like that.
Yeah, I'm curious how much input he actually had on the character himself. I'm curious how much of that was the writing and himself.
I heard that he went to, I want to say like it was like maybe a language therapist or something like that, where he went to learn how to talk as unnervingly as possible, something like that. I remember reading that or hearing that somewhere.
I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was possibly based off of an old interview that Tom Waits did, because he's got a really interesting voice.
Mm.
And I actually remembered looking it up on YouTube and being like, oh yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. I don't remember what show it was on, but yeah, I was like, okay. I don't know if that's actually true, but I could definitely see where people would get that idea.
There's a couple things about this movie that I can critique. One is, again, horrible dialogue. In the scene where the cops are driving Harvey Dent to jail because they think he's Batman and all that, and you've got this one cop, and he's in the car with who we will find out is Commissioner Gordon. Oh, he's not dead. You know, and the guy's like, oh, that's what I'm talking about, air cav, and lines like that, just really dumb lines.
Well, and like you find like it was very odd to have this cop having such a big role, sort of, at the time. Like, it just didn't make any sense. I mean, you find out later it's because Commissioner Gordon was the one that was driving, so that's why they're spending so much time in the cab of this vehicle, but
right.
It was very weird.
Yeah, just the lines. Like, they could have rewritten that to make it sound a little bit more natural, but, like, wow, I just, again, there's always a character or two in these films that just have really terrible dialogue, and I don't get it. It's always at least one or two, or in the case of Dark Knight Rises, 5 or 6, there's always that case in these films, and so I always want to point that out because, you know, as much as people praise these films, and again, I'm not trying to look for things and tear them apart, it's just stuff that sticks out to me, because in a movie that's as good as Dark Knight, the bad really will stick out. That it'll be glaringly bad.
Well, I like the mix in this movie of, like, practical, like, the effects and stuff, too.
Yeah.
The mix of practical and, like, CGI. That whole scene that you're talking about where, with the semi and all that stuff, I mean, that's pretty epic. Like, that was, like, a legit thing that they did.
Yeah.
They flipped a semi.
Yeah.
They could have easily done that with CGI.
Oh, yeah.
It probably would have looked just like that, but it's like, I don't know, I like movies that still do practical effects.
Well, and that's one reason reason why I appreciate Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker. He is much more of a practical effects guy. I think he's one of the guys who still kind of adhere to, you know, computer effects are there to enhance existing effects and things like that, which I think is a perfect way to look at it, you know, as a filmmaker. I also appreciate Nolan for not being kind of a sucker for the 3D game. He doesn't really believe in 3D. He's given speeches on that 3D is just a gimmick, and it's about, you know, the film on the screen. That's our canvas to paint on, and I appreciate him for all of that, just as a filmmaker. Dark Knight is really one of his masterpieces, bar none. I mean, he's done a lot of great films. You got to put Dark Knight up there as one of the, you know, just one of the greats, all-time greats.
For sure. Definitely.
But the one thing I want to talk about, another thing to me that just bothers me, is Maggie Gyllenhaal's portrayal of the character of Rachel again. Again, this character comes up, and I think the problem this time around is that she's just off for the entire film. No matter what scene she's in, it just doesn't feel right. It gets annoying after a while, you know. It's just kind of like, get off the screen so I can get back to seeing more Joker or you know, getting some more awesome scenes between Alfred and Bruce Wayne as they talk about, you know, what's going on, you know, that witty banter, you know.
Like, I usually really like her in the roles that she plays.
Yeah.
I think she's a really good actress, and I think the stilted acting might have something to do with the fact that she didn't play that character in the first film. Yeah. She didn't maybe really know where to go with that portrayal or performance. I don't know. It just seemed kind of forced. Like the character was forced and the relationships were kind of forced.
Yeah. And to her credit, you know, it is a tough situation to walk in on because, you know, this is a second film. You know, not only are you stepping into a role that someone else played, but your character dies by the end of this one. So,
and you have to, like, make people care about that.
Yeah.
And they might not, because I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there was a whole lot going on there.
True. Talking about, you know, this film and it being one of the all-time greats, and there's really not a whole lot to talk about as far as what else there is that's bad, except there's oddities. Like, I don't understand the one main boss. Yeah, we're gonna talk like this, eh? Well, I forget what his name was, but he's taking over for Falcone from the first one. But and I forget the actor's name. But just the
Oh, is that Eric Roberts?
I believe so,
Yeah.
yes. And for to have him talk like that was just really odd. I thought that was a weird choice.
It's Eric Roberts, man.
I mean, hey, more power to him. But just again, and you can call this a nitpick or whatever. But I'm going to repeat this. It's one of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking it, in that front. It's just these little things kind of stick out in a movie that's that good. If I have any other criticisms of it, the movie does run a little long. Its pacing gets a little weird when we start kind of dragging into the Harvey Dent Two-Face angle, because we kind of close the Joker book,
Yeah.
and then we have the Harvey Dent kind of bookend there. And I don't know about you, but that's where I kind of feel like it maybe got a little bit on the long side.
Well, it kind of makes sense because, I mean, the fact that the Joker was such an integral part of this whole movie, once he's out of it, you kind of not don't care anymore, but you just care less.
Because I feel like it kind of leaves a vacuum.
Yeah.
Because he's such a presence.
Yeah.
And that's not to knock. It's not to knock Aaron Eggert's performance in this. And actually, there's a point that I want to make here, that it was a missed opportunity, and I need to say this right here, right now. Okay, this has to be said. I've thought this since the beginning of seeing this movie. Harvey Dent's campaign slogan is "I believe in Harvey Dent." That's not what it should have been. It should have been "Think about the future." Because if you're a Batman fan, you're going to get that reference to the original Batman film of the character of Aaron Eggert, who plays Harvey Dent, but there's a character named Aaron Eckhart who the Joker in that film points a gun at him and says, "Think about the future," before shooting him. See, that would have been a clever tagline.
You're going really deep on that one, James.
I may be going a little deep, but I just wanted to share that thought out there.
Now you make me want to watch the original Batman.
Well, see, hey, that's not a bad thing, though. I don't know. I wanted to put that out there and get that on record because I've thought about that since the beginning. I'm like, it should have been "Think about the future." That would have been a great little inside baseball for the bat nerds out there like myself. At least I would have appreciated it. I don't know if anyone else out there would appreciate it, but I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
I think I would have appreciated it once the explanation was brought forth. Before that, I just was looking at you like you're a crazy person.
I would have been like one of 3 people apparently who would have gotten that one. But, I don't know. I thought that was fun. I don't know, John, do you have any more thoughts on Dark Knight before we get into...
I mean, other than it's like, if any, you can nitpick at it. I mean, you kind of have to nitpick at it a little bit because it's such a good movie. It like you said, no, it doesn't really make you look at the bad things, but I don't know, it kind of does, like, because it's such a good movie. You almost, like, in order for, like, the world to right itself, it has to have some, like, bad bits in it,
Yeah.
But, like, it's a superbly directed movie, a really well acted movie. I'm just going to reiterate, like, Heath Ledger is just, it's incredible. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, he basically steals the movie, like, but everybody else does a great job. Like, Christian Bale still does a great job. Morgan Freeman does a great job. Gary Oldman, we haven't really mentioned him at all.
He's great.
He's fantastic in everything.
Michael Caine as Alfred.
Yep.
Great here.
So
his famous "Some people will just want to watch the world burn" speech is always a good scene in that film.
Yep. No, it's just a really good movie.
Yeah. Which, unfortunately, I can't say about the third film in this piece, Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there.
Now, my experience with this film, just to be on the record and be upfront, is the first time that I ever saw this, and I believe the only time I saw this up until just the other day when I watched it again, was in the theater. I believe I went to go to a midnight showing in the theater. I had people over at my apartment to watch the first 2 films that afternoon before going to the midnight showing with some of those people. And that was the only time I saw it. Now, at the time that I saw it, I didn't think it was good. And I had problems with it. And so I just didn't watch it for all these years. And not until recently.
I'm the same way. Like, I think I saw it at the IMAX.
Oh, okay.
Before that became defunct here in our area. Yeah, it was the same thing. Like, and I like well, I'm sure we'll get into it, like how the comparisons between this movie and The Dark Knight. I mean, they have to be made, but like, I don't think that that's why I didn't like it. I just didn't like it just because it wasn't that great of a movie.
Right.
There was a lot of good stuff in it, but
Yeah.
there was a lot of not good stuff in it too.
I think if I had to put it in a nutshell, my thought on Dark Knight Rises, it's a film that needed to go through about 2 or 3 more rewrites before it was ready to be shot. That's how the whole movie felt to me. It felt like you needed to go through a couple more rewrites, tighten it up, work out some of the problems that the script had, but they just didn't. You know, I don't know if it was a rushed script job or for some reason Christopher Nolan thought that what his brother wrote, because I think his brother wrote this script too, if they just thought that it was great and they were going to shoot it. This is the perfect example of no director bats 1,000. There's not a director out there that gets every one of them right.
Yeah.
And you know, unfortunately for this trilogy, it's the third one that Nolan just couldn't stick the landing. I went through and I took a full page of notes on this film. I'm not going to go through painstakingly, just for your mercy and mine.
I mean, there was just so much going on in this movie. It was almost like a Spider-Man 3 type situation where there was just too many villains.
Yeah.
Too many characters. I mean, because you've got Batman, you've got Bane, you've got Catwoman, you've got
this new Blake officer guy. You've got Miranda Tate as a new one. There's a lot of new characters that just come flooding in, which is part of the problem.
It's just too much at once to try and. I mean, you can wrap your head around it, but it's like you don't want to.
Yeah,
it's just not. It's not that interesting. They're just being crammed into like.
Right.
Well, this is the last movie we're making, so we got to get all this stuff in. You know?
And so I think you could, again, that's why another rewrite or two could have really, you know, trimmed the fat, you know, where it's like, do we really need this character? Or, you know, and just really find it, because this movie is 2 hours and 44 minutes long.
Yeah.
That is a brutal runtime.
Yeah, you were talking about The Dark Knight being too long. I was going to say this movie was definitely too long.
Yeah, and I guess I might want to take that back on Dark Knight. I don't think it was too long necessarily, but as much as the pacing felt a little off once we got to the
it drags at the end,
so it kind of drags a little bit.
But this movie's just way too long.
Way too long. I mean, they needed to chop 30 minutes off of this sucker and just make it lean and mean. And again, that's what future script writing would have helped do, is to refine and focus. But unfortunately, they didn't. And so I'm just kind of skimming through my notes here. You know, they make a big deal out of Harvey Dent in this film, again, which I don't know if we need to do that. You know, they make him out to be, you know, honestly, it's almost like he's Jesus Christ, you know, in this film, because, you know, they have an annual Harvey Dent Day that they all gather around and tell Harvey Dent stories, I guess. Like they tell it, they record it and they show it, like, you know, like CNN broadcast it apparently or whatever.
Yeah.
And they talk about the Dent Act, which is a law that was passed. I mean, it's like all Dent. I am shocked that they didn't have a statue in the middle of like the town square of Harvey Dent. You know, I'm shocked they didn't do that, because there is a statue later on in the film, but not of Harvey Dent. You know, just it's a little weird and a little odd. Again, we have Catwoman in this film played by Anne Hathaway, who I will say actually does a pretty good job with this role.
I'll agree with that.
I would say they didn't give her a whole lot to work with though, but what they did give her, she handled well.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy like the whole like romance between like her and Batman. Really.
Oh, that's one of the big problems with this.
Yeah,
because it comes at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
You don't feel like there's some chemistry between them that you feel going on in this film, but it's never a romantic feel, and it just comes out of left field.
Well, and at the same time, he's like banging the Al Ghul chick.
Well,
so
yeah, which
like,
comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
and so there's a whole lot of stuff that happens, and again, here is the problem when you write a script and then you don't ask the question, why is this character doing this? Because you need to have answers for those things, and they need to be conveyed in the actual film, because otherwise, these things are just happening for reasons.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's what that's telling me is that I shouldn't care, because if you didn't care
Yeah.
enough to give an answer in your film, I'm not going to care enough as a viewer to keep paying attention to this.
Yeah, the burden is on you to try and figure it out, but if it's not interesting enough to figure out, then who cares?
Right. And so there's a lot that happens in this film that, I put for reasons at the end. So, just because it just happens that way, and I'm going to be skipping around, but, Wayne's, he loses his money, his fortune, and all that kind of stuff. So, but he has his company, but he decides to give his company away. Now, who does he give his company to? You'd think, maybe Lucius Fox, maybe Alfred Pennyworth, the two guys in his life that he can actually probably trust. No, he gives it to Miranda Tate, this lady that he barely knows, that he just met, and is just like she has this clean energy initiative thing going on that Wayne Enterprises is funding and trying to implement, and he gives it to her. Obviously, because the script, it serves the script for the story. But I need more of a reason than that. I need an in-movie world reason why he would do that, and it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever why he would just, oh yeah, here you go, it's yours.
Yeah. You don't know this person. Why would you do this?
Right.
I get it that you're having relations with this person, but
well, not at that point.
Not even yet.
Not at that point.
But he obviously wanted to.
And he gives it to her. It's only after that we see them, sleep together in Wayne Manor. There's a lot of oddities in this film, too, that don't make sense. And to me, this is one that I feel like the character was rewritten, but some of the lines around him must not have been, because the Officer Blake, who is played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's called a hothead by this other officer, I swear, like 4 or 5 times. And there's no reason for it. He keeps being called a hothead, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's Joseph Gordon-Levitt,
right?
Like,
if you're gonna cast somebody to be a hothead, for one, have them be a hothead in the movie,
Yeah.
and two, don't cast Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yes,
because he's the least hothead person I could ever think of being in a role.
yeah.
Now, is that a bad thing? No, not necessarily.
No.
But for that character, I don't know.
Just don't call him a hothead.
Yeah,
That's all.
there you go.
You can rewrite the script pretty easy. Call him something else. Boring for one.
But he's a poor orphan, James.
Oh yes, there we go. Now there's something I want to talk about. There's something I want to talk about. You might not know this, but Officer Blake has a superpower, and his superpower is that he has an orphan sense, and this orphan sense is very specific because it lets him know. He can tell who's Batman because of his orphan sense. This is basically the explanation we're given, that one day Bruce Wayne visited the orphanage that he funds, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Officer Blake, was just an orphan in that place just at the time, and he looked in Bruce Wayne's eyes, and he knew he was Batman. That was it. And it's like, wow, what a superpower. That's a very specific and odd
I'm
superpower.
an orphan, you're an orphan,
And you're Batman.
You're Batman. For sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes perfect sense. One of the worst, horribly written, script moments there that didn't need to be there. I don't get it.
I mean, there didn't really need to be an explanation for it.
No, because I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make this character like a really good detective, or because the passing of the baton for no reason, which we'll get to, but that's out there. So I think that's what they're trying to do, but I think they fail to do any of that.
Well, yeah, they're trying to establish a relationship between the two of them.
Yeah.
To further the result at the end that we'll get into.
And it doesn't make any sense. No. One thing leads to another, and we get to the moment that fans of the Nightfall comic book series have always wanted to see: a throwdown between Bane and Batman where Bane breaks the bat. I thought that the scene contained in and of itself was well done. And I will say this is one thing that I actually have to say, because in the theater watching with Bane and his voice and, hey, Batman.
Hey, Batman.
I couldn't hear him. I couldn't hear half of what Bane said in the theater.
Yeah.
Now, when I watched it, though, it was a lot clearer. I could actually understand most of what he was saying. So it
Yeah.
had to be that surround sound mix that just drowned out his voice.
Yeah.
So that's a criticism that I will take. There's still a couple lines that are kind of like muffled, but for the most part, that's taken care of on the home video release, at least what I was watching. So there is that. But I did like the banter back and forth between Bane and Batman as they fought. Bane knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman for no reason, though, which, kind of funny.
I wonder if he has orphan sense as well.
He might. I don't know.
I mean, I think he was an orphan.
He was left alone in that prison.
He was.
So, he could be an orphan boy too, and his orphan sense could have been tingling. Yeah, he just knows for reasons. He beats Batman. He breaks his back, which happens in the comics as well. And then Bane decides, and this is a really lavish way to show your villainy. I just like this. I need to point this out. He decides to fly, at least I'm assuming he's flying halfway across the world, to drop Bruce Wayne in this prison that he was in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a cheap trip. I mean, I know he's got all Bruce Wayne's money
Bane.
now.
He's got all the money.
But it takes a lot of time, and effort to just throw him in there. And he even
it's
has
symbolic, James.
And
it's symbolic.
I know. It's such great. Oh, oh man, it's so good. I can't even get the words out. But he even has a nice little TV set up in the prison cell for Bruce to watch, which magically will show what's going on in Gotham City. I don't know how Bane has set up the international feed for that, or how that works.
They got Wi-Fi down there.
Yeah, I don't know. And it was an old CRT TV, which I really appreciated too, which kind of adds to the whole thing. So I didn't understand that. For some fun reason, people try to climb out of this prison. And no one can make it, except one person did once upon a time.
And it wasn't Bane.
And it turns out it wasn't Bane. They tried to lead you to believe it was, but it wasn't. It was Rachel Dawes. No.
She entered that prison, Katie Holmes, and she left it as Maggie Gyllenhaal.
No, there is a twist. No, so Batman's down there. Well, Bane goes back and he takes this. So basically, the Clean Energy Initiative, it's powered basically by nuclear energy, because why not? And nothing bad can come of that. So Bane takes the core out. And this is the part that I don't understand. There's a lot I don't understand about this movie. The nuclear core will start to deteriorate over time and become more and more unstable. And Bane knows that it will detonate automatically, because it'll become so unstable, in about 5 months. He says it right when they take it. And I'm sitting there going, 5 months? You're going to wait 5 freaking months? What in the world? Talk about a terrible, terrible idea. You're giving your opponents 5 freaking months to come up with a counter-attack plan.
Yeah, you gotta wait for Batman to get good again.
Right.
Gotta wait for that back to heal up.
It's
James.
just, again, a little too convenient.
Yeah.
A little too convenient.
Once again, where a rewrite might have
Again,
come in handy there.
exactly.
And I feel like that's kind of where it starts to drag. The whole prison scene is really where it kind of starts to drag, because it's like, it feels like, okay, I mean, the movie's not obviously over because Batman just got defeated, but it's like, where do we go from here? It's such a weird lull in the middle of the movie.
Right.
They should have just had a montage with Batman just getting stronger over time. They could have just put that into a little 2-minute montage, and it would have been so much better.
There's one thing that we do learn about Bane that's very important. He really hates football. He's got bombs around the city, and it takes out half the football stadium and kills the entire both teams on the field.
Yeah, that scene was a little. I mean, it was a little odd to me.
Yeah.
I get that he's supposed to be a bad man, but it was just, I don't know. It was weird.
It was very weird. And he traps thousands of cops down in the sewers because for some reason Gotham thought it would be a great idea to send every single cop they had down into the sewers to get Bane. Screw all the other criminals that we've got.
Yeah.
There's this Bane guy around, and we need to send every cop down there, except for Blake and Gordon, conveniently. And so they get trapped down there with all these bombs going off. It cuts on purpose. That was the whole plan,
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that Bane's base was right underneath the R&D department of Wayne Enterprises. So they have all of the spare Batmobiles to parade around in the streets with and all that kind of stuff. And again, all of this is very convenient, very, very, again, it comes off as lazy and kind of insulting to my intelligence as a viewer, which is very different from what I got out of The Dark Knight itself.
Yeah.
There is another piece of this now that if you're not thinking, this scene actually seems very good. And so very early on in the movie, during Harvey Dent Day, at the very beginning, Gordon has this written speech that he is going to come out and basically tells the truth about Harvey Dent, right? But he puts it back in his pocket and he's like, whatever, I'm not going to do it. Through events that happened earlier in the movie, Bane gets his hands on this. Now, some people might be thinking this is a good scene, but I'm about to tell you why it's the dumbest scene in movie history. Bane takes his speech out, and he's got, he's on Bane TV. He proceeds to read Gordon's speech that exposes Dent as a villain, and he goes, "This was written by Commissioner Gordon," and, and he reads it, and he starts talking about how corrupt all these cops are because of that. Now, why is that dumb?
I don't know, James. Why?
Bane is a villain, and he just claims that this speech is from Gordon. Why should anyone believe him? Why would anyone in their right mind just believe what this madman has to say? It makes zero sense. Any thinking person, and even though it turns out to be true, and we the audience know it's true,
Yeah.
why would anyone in Gotham believe that? That their beloved Commissioner Gordon turned out to be a complete liar.
Yeah.
And that the person that they celebrate, Harvey Dent Day, that everyone loves, why all of a sudden would they just suddenly believe he's a murderous villain? Why?
Plot.
Again,
Story.
it's
for
convenient.
reasons.
It's reasons, again. And it's dumb. You want to know how you fix that? You really want to know how you can fix this? You have that Gordon couldn't be at the Harvey Dent Day, so he was going to send in a video of himself saying that Harvey Dent's a villain, but he decides not to send the video in. Now, Bane gets it, and he shows the video of Gordon himself saying it. Boom, you fix it. Because it's Gordon himself saying it, it's irrefutable, and then it becomes a good scene. At least one that is serviceable, one that you can be used. And I fixed that by changing nearly nothing in the script.
Yeah.
I just turned it from a written speech to a video. It's a very, very bad scene that no one should believe, but apparently everyone believes it, and they're like, yeah, screw the cops, Like, okay, we're supposed to believe that. One thing that I do love, now, this is good news for everyone out there. If you have a broken back, if you're paralyzed, you may not think so, but there's a cure out there for you.
Oh, yeah.
All right? Now, what you need to do is you need to get a rope and, tie it to the ceiling and then kind of hoist yourself up in it. And then you have an old guy stand behind you and punch you in the back really hard. Now, it's going to hurt a lot, but you know what? In a few days, you're going to be just
right
fine.
As rain.
You're right as rain. Yep, absolutely. I learned that from Dark Knight Rises.
It has to be done in a really old, deep prison, though.
Oh, that's true. That's what makes it work.
I heard the magnetism down there is just perfect. It really helps with the whole back strengthening
it aligns them up. Yeah, it really aligns things. The prisoners down there, they also, they run a chiropractic firm down there, so they're always cracking each other's backs and stuff. They get really aligned well. Just a good tip for you out there. I mean, I get it. He breaks the bat, he breaks his back. How do you come back from that? And in the comic books, it's so much easier to explain. In the films, you write yourself into a corner, and I get it. It's tough. So maybe what you shouldn't have had happen is that Batman's back gets broken. I don't know. I know it's from the comics, but maybe we just not do that because then you don't have to do the magic back-breaking healing with a rope and a punch. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was talking about, too, how, it's a weird lull in the movie. It doesn't make sense. It's too convenient how everything just kind of happens.
Let's fast forward to the end.
Let's.
Well, one of the many endings of this film that never seems to die. we get to the part where Bane comes back to Gotham, and he learns in the prison that Bane's mask is his weakness. If he can get the mask off, Bane becomes in agony and he can't fight back. So
I mean,
Batman,
that's kind of obvious, though, isn't it?
I would think so.
Like, he's wearing the mask for a reason. It's not for
Right.
dramatic effect.
And this is where it takes a major depart from the comic books of the Bane character, which I get because Nolan's trying to ground this character more, I guess, kind of in reality. Although having a magic mask that takes away pain, I don't know how realistic that is, but whatever, I'll roll with it. So Batman, concentrates on the mask and breaks it, and he tells Tate to watch the door, but she comes up behind him and stabs him in the back. Oh no, she's Talia al Ghul, and oh no, I'm the daughter of Ra's, and I'm here to finish his work, and Bane and I are a thing, and and blah 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 blah.
We were in prison together.
At this time, Gordon's trying to neutralize the bomb before it blows up because he's only got minutes at this point. So 5 full months have gone by.
Yeah.
At this point,
And they have it down to the minutes.
and they do have it down to the
It's
minutes.
like this completely unstable nuclear device, nuclear warhead that we think is going to explode
Right.
in 5 months. We have it down to the second.
Yes, it's completely unstable. However, we know exactly when it's going to explode. Again, really stupid,
Yeah.
really dumb, and
And aren't they like just driving it around?
yeah. So the whole
Like
plot
nobody
was
knows where it is.
right. So they have a random trigger person that no one knows who has the detonator. Turns out it's Talia, and that there's like 3 or 4 different trucks running around, and some of them are dummies, and there's only one that really has the bomb, and so blah blah blah. So Gordon has to track it down. He tracks it down, and he neutralizes it temporarily with this like remote device. Again, how you do that with a nuclear, I have no idea, whatever. So then Talia has to run off and try to foil Gordon's plans. And she tells Bane, don't kill Batman, because that's always a good idea.
For reasons.
For reasons. Well, she says she wants him to feel the heat of the blast. So it
Of
kind of
course.
makes sense, but you know what? If you're a villain in any of these superhero movies, just kill the good guy. Like, just do it. Don't wait. Don't wait. It's always a bad idea. Okay? But she decides to go off, and so Bane fixes his mask, and he decides he's going to, hurt Batman or whatever. So he's going to, beat him up and kill him anyway. But then Catwoman breaks in with the bat pod and shoots Bane and kills him in one of the most anticlimactic, unsatisfying deaths I
Yeah.
think I've seen in a long time. I was like, oh, Batman's foe who hurt Batman and was Batman's problem gets dispensed by
Who
Catwoman.
has nothing to do with anything.
Huh. Well, that's unsatisfying. Huh. Kinda crap. And then it's at this point where Catwoman kisses Batman for the first time. It's this late into the film
Yeah.
where we actually force the romance into this picture. And so Batman, now we talk about nuclear, what is it with nuclear bombs in movies that were made around this time that people are so stupid about? Because we have the whole nuke the fridge thing with
Oh.
Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which this
Yeah.
reminds me of. So not only do we have to accept that this unstable nuclear bomb can detonate at any second, and we know the seconds though, we know it,
We know it.
but Batman, he's going to fly it in his bat plane, or the bat jet, or whatever you want to call it, into the harbor, and it explodes. The good news is that by exploding the bomb in the harbor, Batman saved the citizens of Gotham, because this bomb has like a 6-mile radius, apparently. That's what they say. The bad news is that Batman murders and mutilates sea life for generations to come. Aquaman is pissed.
And he's part of the DC universe.
Yeah,
so-
like he is not happy about this development. I'm sorry to tell you.
I wonder why he doesn't want to join the Justice League.
Well, all right, Batman
Makes
killed all his
sense.
pals. So Batman is apparently dead. He couldn't survive a nuclear blast, which makes sense. And I was like, okay, he died. Okay, let's move on. And then Blake, the cop, decides, this whole being a cop thing isn't for me for some reason, so I'm going to be done being a cop because reasons. Wayne Manor is turned into a home for at-risk kids because that's in his will, apparently. Then we learn that Blake's middle name. What is his middle name, John?
Robin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They and if
I just don't, to this day, I don't understand that setup because it doesn't get paid off and it
doesn't,
never will.
it doesn't. And if you thought that was a clever nod, you're an idiot. I'm just gonna go out there and say it because that was stupid.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't clever. It was lazy. Ugh. And it does. And like John, like you said, it doesn't have a payoff. It's just complete cringe when I saw it again. I was like, oh, that's just bad.
Well, that's what I'm wondering if, like, was there supposed to be a payoff with that? Was there supposed to be another Chris Nolan Batman movie? But then I mean, I'm assuming that this one did well at the box office.
I think
I
it
mean,
did.
I definitely did not do
It didn't
as well
bomb.
critically, I'm sure, because I think we're not the only ones that didn't like it,
Right.
but I don't know. They
So
just set up stuff in this one that just didn't get paid off.
yeah, I mean, but then Blake finds the Batcave. Nah. Which again doesn't make any sense because this is the third one in the trilogy. We're ending it here.
Yeah.
But I know the whole point. I believe the whole point is that Batman isn't a person. He's an icon. He's a symbol, and so Batman will live on no matter what.
Yeah.
Maybe Bruce Wayne is dead, but Batman is not. Or is Bruce Wayne dead? Because
Dun, dun, dun.
now we get a scene that is fantastic to me. Because Alfred's in Paris and he sees Bruce with Selena Kyle at a cafe. And they don't say anything, they nod to each other, which alludes back to a story that Alfred was telling Bruce in the movie, that he wanted that to happen one day. What that tells you it tells you two things. Number one, that Alfred has impeccable timing to be where he is. And then it also tells you that Bruce Wayne is immune to nuclear bombs. Because this bomb that had a 6-mile radius, he survived that.
That his bat wing is just really fast, James. He got away from it, even though it doesn't show that at all.
It's so bad. I mean,
And it's like we were talking about in an earlier episode when we were talking about Back to the Future. It negates the meaning.
right.
Like you think, okay, he's dead, and like you're talking about, okay, we have Robin here who's gonna take over the cape, and we have to have Batman live on because he's dead. Well, then when he's alive at the end, it's like, well, what was the point of any of that?
Well, and I think it negates a line that's said earlier in the film, where Catwoman says to him, "What are you doing? Continue putting your life on the line for these people. You don't owe them anything. You've given them enough. You've given them everything." And then Batman says, "No, I haven't, not yet."
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't that line have been so much more poignant if he died in that blast saving Gotham?
Well, and I think like they set it up as if he did.
Yeah.
So then when he doesn't at the end, it's kind of like, oh, okay.
It's just that happy ending to satisfy
Yeah.
people. I mean, that's all it is. And to have Alfred have a bookend,
Yeah.
at the end of it, which you didn't really need.
No, it's to have it's to have like a nice little moment
Right.
to end it,
Right.
rather than
Yeah.
yeah.
Unfortunately, and I have to say this because I don't want movies to be bad when I go to see them, but unfortunately, this movie sucks. It's really bad. And the shame is that there's kernels of good things in this film, which is why like when I said this could have done with a couple more rewrites, the reason why it could have is because this could have been a good movie with some of the bits and pieces that they had.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, way too bloated, way too long, way too many new characters introduced at once that we don't care about.
Yeah.
And, you could have really trimmed that down. It's kind of a testament to Nolan where he had all these new characters in Batman Begins, because they're all new to us in Batman Begins. But he paces them and puts them in a way where we get to know them all. They're not all shoved at us at once, and they're allowed to grow, and it feels more organic. This movie, they shove them all at us. Basically, it's rapid fire. It's like new person, new person, new person, new person, like
Yeah,
one after another.
It's much more forced.
And it's much more forced, and it's not a natural, organic thing. And a lot of this is just because the script says so. It's amazing how far this movie falls below The Dark Knight and even Batman Begins
Yeah.
as far as in this trilogy. I don't watch it. you know.
Yeah.
I will watch the first two films, but I refuse to watch Dark Knight Rises. You know, the only reason I watched it the other day was for this podcast episode.
Yeah.
Because someone had to take that fall. And, you know, like the movie says, you know, you either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Not that I'm dead yet, but I felt like dying watching Dark Knight Rises. So, I mean, it was pretty close. You know a couple things now. You've learned things. You learned how to cure a broken back. You know,
it's a very educational film.
he learned that, you know, some orphans out there must have an orphan sense that can detect if Bruce Wayne is Batman. How those things correlate, not sure, but it's a thing, okay? Trust me. Because these are the grounded Nolan movies that are just seeped in reality. So people say. Which the first two, that's absolutely true. This third one goes off the rails in so many different departments. And I didn't touch on a lot of things in this film because, again, for time. Sake, I'm not going to go into every little thing, but it was a film that I really wanted to talk about because I think it deserves to be razzed a little bit more than it is.
Well, because it's going off the coattails of The Dark Knight, so people are automatically going to think that it needs to be defended because of The Dark Knight, which they have somewhat of a point, but you got to get to a certain point where it's like, no, it's not that great of a movie.
Right.
It doesn't have to be. Like, you want it to be great.
Absolutely.
You want it to be fantastic because it's coming from these two really good films. But I think, like I said before, it kind of has like a Spider 3 feel to it where there's just or Spider-Man 3 feel to it where there's just too much stuff going on.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those situations where it's like, boy, I wish I could come on here and be like, man, that Dark Knight Rises, boy, that was a great film. I wanted it. You know, I wanted to have a complete Batman trilogy that was awesome. I have yet to get that, you know, and hopefully this new one with, what's his face?
Robert Pattinson.
Yes, will turn into something that's actually good.
Well, kind of when we were talking about, you know, how initially everybody thought that Heath Ledger would be, you know, bad as the Joker. Like, I'm hoping that this is something like that.
Yeah, because a lot of people are razzing on Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
For being the Twilight guy. But I've also heard from some of his defenders that he's been in a lot of good movies past, you know, in between that.
Oh, yeah.
And
I think, like, literally since Twilight, everything that he's done since that has been trying to break away from that stereotype.
Yeah, which is hard to do.
Really weird movies.
Yeah. And so, you know, if he truly is good in those films, you know, and again, best actor for the role, regardless of my stereotypes, because I think I was even one who, when Heath Ledger was originally cast as a Joker, I just didn't see it. I thought it was kind of stupid casting. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I was proven completely wrong. Pleasantly so. You know, in these situations, please prove me wrong. You know, that's kind of my attitude towards it. Please prove me wrong, because I want great Batman movies. I'm a big Batman fan, and so I'm hoping for nothing but good things on this next trilogy. Well, if it is a trilogy, I have no idea. I guess I shouldn't say that. They're doing one movie for sure. I'm sure they want it to be a trilogy. We shall see where that goes. But do you have any other thoughts before we close this one out?
I don't think so. I'd just be kind of reiterating exactly what I've already said pretty much.
All right, man. Well, that being said, this wraps it up for Film Forum, and we will see you next time.
See ya.